Hello everyone, and welcome back to Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. In our last episode, we would see that Britain was going through a hard time in the 1970s. The Queen Mother loved spending time with her family, and it was also in this period that Princess Margaret divorced Lord Snowdon, which made the Queen Mother and Queen Elizabeth upset, because they really liked him. The Queen Mother remained friends with Lord Snowdon throughout her life, and the Queen Mother spent time with Princess Margaret's children, and they enjoyed her company. In 1977, there was the Silver Jubilee. Let's see what's going on today. In the summer, Queen Elizabeth took on another pleasant responsibility. She was installed as the 160th Lord Warden of the Cinque Ports at Dover, the first woman ever to hold the post. Her appointment had been proposed in 1978 by the Prime Minister, James Callaghan. The group of strategic ports facing continental Europe at the Channel's narrowest point had existed since before the Norman conquest. They were the Anglo-Saxon successors to the Roman system of coastal defense. The original 5 ports were Hastings, Romney, Hythe, Dover, and Sandwich Rye, and Winchelsea were added later. After the Norman invasion, King William I gave them special jurisdiction. They provided the core of the king's fleet until the 14th century, but they lost their monopoly and declined. They were retained through a symbolic importance. In recent years, the most distinguished holder of the title had been Winston Churchill, who took it on at the height of the war in 1941 and kept it until his death in 1965. After Churchill, Queen Elizabeth's friend and admirer Robert Menzies, the former Prime Minister of Australia, monarchist and Anglophile, had the position. Monday, July 30th, together with Princess Margaret and Prince Edward, Queen Elizabeth embarked in the royal yacht at Greenwich to sail to Dover for her installation. Princess Margaret's children, David and Sarah, joined her the next day. The Queen Mother over the years had come to enjoy her summer visits to the Kent coast. She had based herself at Lord Warden's apartments in Walmer Castle near Deal, and every year her staff, led by the indomitable William Talon and the housekeeper, would load a van with furniture, silver, cutlery, glass, kitchen equipment, wine, and food, so that Walmer Castle, which was empty most of the year, was transformed into a miniature royal palace for the 2 days that she was there. The kitchen was tiny, but her chef, Michael Seeley, did the best he could, and she enjoyed entertaining local dignitaries and friends from London in style. On several occasions, she invited the biographer Kenneth Rose. In one letter of thanks, he wrote that his heart glowed with pride to see the Lord Warden's flag flying from the battlements of Walmer. "I shall never forget standing on the terrace with Your Majesty, gazing across to France, a magic moment, as if time had run back to fetch the age of King Henry V." Monday, August 27, 1979, the Queen Mother was lunching with friends and members of her household at her favorite salmon pond, Bouvier, on the River Dee, when a policeman came to speak to Alistair Ard, her deputy private secretary. He had a terrible news. Lord Mountbatten had been killed in an explosion in his small boat just outside the harbour of Sligo in Ireland. Mountbatten and his family had been staying, as they did every August, at Classybon Castle, a large Gothic-style house which his wife Edwina had inherited and which Mountbatten had adored. He had gone there without problems for many years, despite the increasing trouble of the IRA throughout the 1970s. Security was lax. He and the members of his family went out most days on a 29-foot fishing boat, and it was named the Shadow 5, which was left unprotected in the harbor for long periods. The Irish Republican Army hit a bomb on board and detonated as Mountbatten steered the boat out to sea. He was killed instantly. So were his 14-year-old grandson Nicholas Knatchbull and the young Irish boatman Paul Maxwell. Mountbatten's daughter Patricia, her husband John Brabourne, who had made the film Royal Family, and his mother and Nicholas's twin brother Timothy were seriously injured. John Brabourne's mother died the next day. The Queen Mother was horrified by the news. Shortly afterwards, the Queen, with Princess Margaret and her children, came to join her at Polvere. Everyone was horrified and deeply distressed, her lady-in-waiting recorded in the diary. Prince Charles was told the news in Iceland, and he was overcome by the loss of a man he described that night in his journal as a combination of his grandfather, great-uncle, father, brother, and friend. He flew back to Scotland to grieve with his family. September 4th, the Queen Mother, together with the Queen, Princess Margaret, and the Prince of Wales, took the train to London together for Lord Mountbatten's funeral in Westminster Abbey the next day. It was a grand and stirring event. Mountbatten had planned every moment himself. A few days later, she gave tea at Birkhall to the new Conservative Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. The views of the two women on this occasion wasn't recorded, but Mrs. Thatcher wrote it was a great pleasure to talk with the Queen Mother about Rhodesia. The views of the front was largely accepted. The conference agreed to end the white settler rule, a new constitution, free elections, and the creation of a new independent state to be named Zimbabwe under the elected black majority government. At their Birkhall tea, Queen Elizabeth had given the Prime Minister a silver brooch. Mrs. Thatcher told the Queen Mother she would always treasure it. The two women shared a belief in the greatness of Britain and the important role that the monarchy played in the cohesion of the British society. Margaret Thatcher resolved to reduce the role of government in both public and private sectors, and her government was the first since 1945 to seriously question the state provision of services. This meant that the importance of voluntarism, which the monarchy had always championed, was now being recognized once more in government. The Queen Mother had a habit, much enjoyed by friends, of raising or lowering her glass in dinner table toast. For those of whom she disapproved, such as some socialist politicians, the dear old Liberal Democrat mix-up party, as she referred to the merged Liberal and Social Democrat parties, and the Forestry Commission, which she blamed for planting too many ugly conifers on pristine Scottish moors, she would propose a toast of down with, while lowering her glass out of sight below the table. For those she favored, the toast was more traditional, with the glass held up. Up with de Gaulle was one. For Mrs. Thatcher, the glass was always high. When the Queen Mother turned 80, there was an important new building and also an important new relation that came into her life. The year started badly. She had problems with her horses. She said the problem with jumpers was that one always had to wait a long time to discover how good they would really be, and one's hopes are always high. So disappointment would be all the greater. She hoped the next season would be more healthy for them, and she said it was difficult to find a decent horse at a decent price nowadays. Throughout this period, her own legs were continuing to give her pain. She had ischemic damage caused by the paws of affectionate corgis, and was one of the principal and most painful ailments from which she suffered. I think that I looked it up, and it was said that it was like a lack of oxygen in the blood and in the tissue, and that caused the pain. In London, she saw the royal physician Sir Richard Bayliss before going to Royal Lodge with Princess Margaret and Elizabeth Elphinstone. She remained there until the annual service in memory of the King in the Royal Chapel on February the 6th. There was a great sadness in the early part of 1980 with the death of Lady Doris Viner. They had been close friends for more than 60 years, and Lady Doris was the last real link to Queen Elizabeth's youth. Queen Elizabeth arranged a memorial service for her in the Chapel Royal at St. James's Palace, after which she gave a lunch at Clarence House for the family. In May, the Queen Mother traveled north as usual for her fishing fortnight, but this year she stayed at Craigavon in the grounds of Balmoral Castle, as the Queen was having a new kitchen built at Birkhall as her birthday present to her mother. The Queen and Princess Margaret were well aware that their mothers' homes all became a little tired as the decades passed, because the Queen Mother hated to spend money on furnishings, redecoration, or even maintenance. From her 60s onward, she would say, "I won't be around much longer, it's not worth it." So the guests enjoyed shabby lino in the bathrooms, frayed curtains and damaged lampshades in the bedrooms, and sometimes when she was away, her daughters would have chairs recovered in identical material, so she would not notice anything had changed. When the Queen gave her mother a new carpet for the drawing room at the Castle May, it had to be indistinguishable from the one it replaced. Queen Elizabeth's house parties in Scotland were more prolonged and more spontaneous than the musical weekends at the Royal Lodge. As time went by, Birkhall seemed increasingly like another world, totally separated from modern Britain. Some visitors found it magical. The same guests returned year after year. As a rule, only death ended their annual invitations. For her 80th birthday, her friends and members of her household decided to combine the pleasures of moor and stream and eating al fresco, and they clubbed together to build her a log cabin at Polvere. On the morning of Saturday, May 17th, the presentation ceremony took place. The beauty and excitement of the day was dashed by a telephone call. Queen Elizabeth's beloved niece, Elizabeth Elphinstone, had died of a heart attack during the night. Her nephew, Fergie Strathmore, broke the news to her. He was with his wife Mary and was driven to Elizabeth to Birkhall. According to Mary Strathmore, there was a long pause on the line after Fergie told her. Then Queen Elizabeth said, "We have to go ahead. We can't let everyone else down. It was a terrible shock. Her niece had been a bridesmaid at her aunt's wedding to the Duke of York, and the women had always been close. The difference in their ages was only 11 years, and they were more like sisters than aunt and niece. Her sudden death cast a dark shadow over an otherwise lovely day, particularly for the Queen Mother." But the Queen Mother refused to allow her own sadness to diminish the pleasure of others. She was driven the short distance from Birkhall through the dappled Calodian pines along the river to Polvere, and was happily surprised to find that there was a large gathering of friends far and wide. She was presented a key to the cabin and a box wrapped in birthday paper and tied with a large bow. Entering for the first time, she found it fully furnished with a long table and chairs ready for lunch. She admired the chimney piece, which had been built with local stone by 2 craftsmen. It was their last job before retirement. Then they had a long and lively lunch, though Elizabeth Elphinstone was missed throughout that day and beyond. The new cabin became a much-loved spot. Queen Elizabeth sent dozens of thank-you letters to all those friends who had contributed to the cost. The Queen Mother wrote, "It has settled in most happily between the river and the pine trees, and I have spent many blissful hours there. In fact, I cannot think what we did before it arrived," she wrote. From now on, she used it on holiday after holiday, year after year, for the rest of her life. If only because it was warmer than the huts and the old Victorian cottages often used for picnics, and her guests appreciated it too, particularly if, with the passing of the years, they felt the cold on the moors or in the river more acutely. Picnics at May, by contrast, remain drafty. So I'm going to end the video here. In this episode, the Queen turned 80 and was given an honor of being named Lord Warden, a great honor. She had problems with her racehorses at this time, and she hoped they would get healthy, because it was hard to find a decent horse at a decent price during the time she lived in. She had some leg issues, but that didn't stop her from having fun. During the summer, she went to the Kent coast and stayed at Walmer Castle, and she would entertain dignitaries and friends there. It was a special place. The royal family got shocking news when they learned that Lord Mountbatten was killed on his fishing boat along with the family members by a bomb planted by the Irish Republican Army. The Queen Mother met Margaret Thatcher, and they enjoyed each other's company. It was also during this time the Queen Mother not only lost a great friend of 60 years, but a niece who she thought more like a sister. Lastly, the Queen was gifted a log cabin by her friends for her birthday. She loved it, and it became a great place to entertain them. It was by the river, and it was warmer than the huts and the Victorian cottages the friends had stayed at before. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you haven't subscribed, if you could do so, it would help the channel to grow, as well as giving it a thumbs up. It's all a great help. And if you haven't clicked on the notification bell, if you could do that, it lets you know when a video is posted. I want to wish everyone a good day, and tune in again soon for another episode of Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Thank you. Bye.